December 7th, 1941. A quiet Sunday morning in paradise. While America slept, Japanese warplanes screamed out of the sky. In nearly 2 hours, more than 2,400 Americans lay dead. But here is what Japan did not understand. They did not win a war that day. They lost one. This is the story of how a desperate nation made a calculated choice that would change the course of history forever. For years before the attack, the United States had been supplying Japan with oil, scrap metal, and steel. Japan depended heavily on American oil. Without it, Japan's ships, aircraft, factories, and armies could not continue operating for long. American resources fueled Japan's brutal invasion of China that began in 1937. But America was divided. Most Americans wanted nothing to do with another world war. Memories of the trenches, the poison gas, the endless carnage of World War I were still fresh. The United States passed neutrality acts to stay out of foreign conflicts. President Franklin Delano Roosevelt walked a tightrope. He supported Britain and the Allies with Lend-Lease aid, calling America the arsenal of democracy. But public opinion and Congress pushed hard to avoid direct involvement. Americans did not want their sons dying in Europe or Asia. Japan had big dreams. They envisioned a greater East Asia co-prosperity sphere, a vast empire free from Western powers. But they lacked natural resources. Without American oil and metal, their war machine would grind to a halt. When Japan expanded deeper into China and then occupied French Indochina in 1940 and 1941, the United States responded with escalating sanctions. In July and August of 1941, America froze Japanese assets and imposed a full oil embargo. Japan suddenly faced a brutal choice: withdraw from conquered lands and lose face, or seize the oil-rich territories of Southeast Asia and risk bringing the United States into the war. Their leaders looked at the calendar. They had reserves for only 1 to 2 years of operations. The clock was ticking. Japan believed they could strike first. If they destroyed the American Pacific Fleet with a devastating surprise attack on Pearl Harbor, they calculated America would be shocked into negotiating peace. Japan would have time to build its empire. It was a desperate gamble, a calculated bet that shock and overwhelming force could change the course of war before America could recover. On that quiet December morning, Japanese military leaders made their choice. At 6:45 in the morning, the destroyer USS Ward spotted something in the darkness: a Japanese midget submarine trying to sneak into Pearl Harbor. They sank it, firing the first American shots of the war against Japan. But the warning was reported, and the warning process was slow. The seriousness was not understood in time. At 7:02, two Army radar operators detected a massive formation of aircraft approaching Oahu from 130 miles out. They reported it. The officer receiving the warning believed it was American B-17 bombers expected from California, one of the greatest intelligence failures in U.S. military history. 6 Japanese aircraft carriers had crossed the Pacific undetected. From their decks, 353 aircraft were launched in 2 waves. At approximately 8 o'clock, hundreds of Japanese warplanes screamed out of the sky. Japanese commander Mitsuo Fuchida radioed Tora Tora Tora, meaning Tiger Tiger Tiger, signaling complete surprise achieved. What happened next was chaos and heroism. Battleships like the USS Arizona exploded in massive fireballs. Planes were destroyed on the ground. Sailors fought heroically amid the inferno, pulling comrades from burning oil-covered waters. 2 young pilots, Lieutenants Kenneth Taylor and George Welch, scrambled their P-40 fighters without orders and shot down several Japanese planes, providing some of the only effective air resistance that day. The first wave arrived shortly before 8 in the morning. The second wave followed. In less than 2 hours, Pearl Harbor was covered in smoke, burning fuel, damaged ships, and destroyed aircraft. 2,403 Americans killed, including civilians. 1,178 wounded. 188 American aircraft destroyed. 8 battleships damaged or sunk. Japan lost only 29 aircraft, 5 midget submarines, and fewer than 100 personnel. On the surface, it appeared to be an overwhelming Japanese victory. But the carriers were at sea. All 3 Pacific Fleet carriers were absent from the harbor. The USS Enterprise and USS Lexington were delivering aircraft elsewhere. The USS Saratoga was on the American West Coast. This proved to be the most crucial luck of the day. These carriers, not battleships, would become the decisive weapons in the Pacific War. Japan also made a critical error. They focused on battleships and aircraft. They did not destroy the enormous fuel storage facilities. They did not destroy the submarine base. They did not destroy the naval repair yards and support installations. Those surviving facilities allowed Pearl Harbor to continue operating as America's main Pacific base. Some damaged ships returned to service quickly, while others required much longer. Several repaired Pearl Harbor battleships later returned to fight Japan. Nearly half the American deaths occurred aboard one ship, the battleship USS Arizona. A bomb penetrated the ship and detonated the forward ammunition magazines. 1,177 sailors and Marines died aboard the Arizona in minutes. The explosion was so violent that the ship was destroyed within minutes. There were 38 sets of brothers serving on that ship. 63 of the 79 brothers were killed. More than 8 decades later, oil still seeps from the Arizona's wreckage, forming what visitors have come to call the Black Tears of the Arizona, a haunting reminder of the men still entombed below. Among the heroes was a black mess attendant named Doris Miller aboard USS West Virginia. Because of racial segregation, men like Miller were typically assigned service duties rather than combat roles. But during the attack, Miller helped move wounded sailors, assisted his dying captain, and then operated an anti-aircraft gun despite having no formal training. He was later awarded the Navy Cross for his heroism. That day revealed the lies of segregation. American valor has no color. Japan achieved a stunning tactical victory, but they catastrophically failed in their strategy. Japan hoped Pearl Harbor would frighten the United States, weaken the Pacific Fleet, and force American leaders to negotiate. Instead, the attack united a deeply divided nation overnight. Isolationism vanished. Enlistment surged. The next day, President Roosevelt told Congress, "Yesterday, December 7, 1941, a date which will live in infamy." War on Japan was declared almost unanimously. Days later, Germany and Italy declared war on the United States. The sleeping giant was awake. America's industrial might, once supplying Japan, now turned fully against the Axis powers, changing the course of World War II. Pearl Harbor was not just an attack. It was the explosive result of supply lines cut, imperial hunger, and a nation that America had once fueled, now turning to desperation. It was the moment when isolationism died and America stepped onto the world stage as a superpower. The bravery of those who fought that day reminds us, freedom has a price. Courage exists in ordinary moments, and sometimes the greatest victory looks like a defeat.